This is my recap on Exodus. Exodus, second book in the Bible. Story of Moses, at least so far. I don't know what, you know, Leviticus, and which is my next one, and the rest of everything will bring, but Genesis seems to be the history between, you know, everybody before Moses, Abraham and Jacob and Joseph and Noah and Adam, Eve, Rachel, all them folks. So, you know, here's the birth of Moses, which was pretty awesome. You know, by this time, the Pharaoh, um, Joseph and Jacob have died. The Pharaoh is not obviously the same. This has been quite a long time in between, and the new Pharaoh doesn't appreciate what the forefathers of the Israelites or of Israel have what done. You know, he didn't appreciate what Joseph, the whole history of what Joseph had done for Egypt and all of his people. He is in fear of, you know, the nation of Israel, the peoples, the foreigners um, are growing in such a huge number. I want to say there was, at least in men alone, there was like 6,000 or 600,000. It was just a lot of folks. And, and this must have been, you know, probably 100 years, hundreds of years from Joseph death, 1805. Moses is born 1526. So hundreds of years. Because they grew in numbers so drastically. And so he puts all of Israel, all of them, and into slavery. At one point, he's just so scared that if they turn on him, that they could overtake their army. So he says, you know what? We're just gonna kill all the men, all the children, all the boys, all the male boys of the Israelites, of the Hebrews. So that's what they do. You know, Moses' mom, you know, hides him for a little bit, makes him a basket, makes it waterproof, puts him in the riverbank. You know, the princess in Egypt, you know, finds them, gives them to a Hebrew woman to take care of them, then takes them back, adopts them, uh, you know, lifted him out of the water. I felt like that was the first baptism. You know, when Moses, it's not saying that's in actuality, but you know, when I see the princess named him Moses, which means I lifted him out of the water, it was just a sign to me. Moses had a son. Moses killed an Egyptian. So here, Moses killed an Egyptian and hid his body. So Moses was a killer. All these people in the Bible that we thought that were all holy, and they might have been holy and whatnot, but they were ruthless. You know, he saw an Egyptian kill a Hebrew, and you know, he thought that nobody saw, but he went ahead and killed the Egyptian, and he was raised Egyptian, and then he hid his body in the sand. Somehow, some way, it got back to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was chasing him. Moses has to run. Then the Lord, shows himself to Moses in the bush. I didn't understand. I didn't. A lot of this I was taught. A lot of this I had read. I don't. Never as an adult. Never front to back as an adult. So I missed the part that there was an angel in the middle of the burning bush of fire, and then there was God in there. And yeah, I don't understand that piece. I don't understand the fact that even though it wasn't burning the bush, um, God tells Moses, hey, 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 don't get too close. Which makes me feel like, okay, was it hot? Even though it's not burning. Um, Moses heard him. He covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. The land of milk and honey, which, I watched a video the other day. It was talking about milk and honey being the only um, things that should be vegetarian, even though they're not, because they don't harm the animals. I mean, we inseminize cows now so they can provide milk, and we're drinking a bunch of pus, and we keep honeys from the wild so bees from the wild so they can create honey and we can make money. So I'm sure it's different now, but the need of God being worship. Moses didn't want to look. I am who I am. To me, again, just like Genesis, like more names and more names and more names keep on being given to God. Here it's like, hey, you're telling me to go grab these people from this Israel and get them out of Egypt. But who do I tell them this? Oh, just tell them I am who I am. So I'm Lord, I'm God, I'm El Shaddai, I'm Adonai, I am who I am. There's so many names. Then God gives Moses 3 magical signs to prove he is God. And to my surprise, and I don't remember being taught this, the Pharaoh had sorcerers and magicians that could do the same, almost all of the same things. And granted, Aaron and Moses' staff, that turned into a snake, ate the snake of the sorcerers, but still, they did a lot of stuff the same. They the plagues of the frogs. They just did a lot, not everything, but they did a lot of the similar things, which blows my mind. Because if God is the only one that could do this, how come the sorcerers could do this? It's wild. I got so many notations, so many things. It's hard for me to understand through all this battle with the Pharaoh trying to save his people. He does it in the name of God, but he lies. He's trying to convince Pharaoh that, let me just take my people into the wilderness just to make our own sacrifices for our own traditions. And, let us just do that in the name of religion and tradition. Obviously he planned to escape and take his people out of Egypt. But this was his way of, and he's like, okay, you just gonna take your elders? No, I want my elders, I want my woman, my children. Okay, so you're gonna leave your cattle here and your flock? No, because I need to sacrifice. Well, take what you're gonna sacrifice. Now, God tells us in the wilderness what we're gonna offer him. So we gotta bring everything. Turning the water It was a lot, you know. Oh, and the whole thing with the Pharaoh is God is in Moses' side, obviously. Yeah, it's very specific in the Bible, 3 or 4 times. That Pharaoh hardens, I mean, the God hardens Pharaoh's heart, meaning he's the cause for Pharaoh saying, nah, 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 nope, nah, nope, not gonna work, nope. All right, you're good. Nah, I'm coming after you. I can't get it. Um, to the point that God is like, you know what? If you don't let my people go, I'm gonna kill the firstborn, um, and the firstborn of the animals from the Egyptians. And then he hardens his heart again. You know, at one point, God almost kills Moses. And it's not very specific. It says, you know, but Moses' wife, you know, on the way to Egypt, at the place where Moses and his family had stopped for the night, the Lord confronted him and was about to kill him. But Moses' wife took a flint knife and circumcised her son. She touched his feet with the foreskin and said, now you are a bridegroom of blood to me. When she said bridegroom, she was referring to the circumcision. After that, the Lord left him alone. So it's not very specific, but you could kind of see the picture that the reason that God is almost killed Moses was because Moses had not circumcised his son. Now I understand why he didn't circumcise him. He wasn't raised Hebrew. He wasn't raised with the people of Israel. He was raised Egyptian. That wasn't a covenant with them. That was a covenant with Abraham and his people, in those generations. But to me, reading into it a little bit is that, oh, you're going to go lead my people, you need to follow the covenant. And because you didn't, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to make you suffer, to the point that Moses can't circumcise. I don't know how the wife knew that that was the reason, but he obviously can't do it. So I'm imagining him bedridden and the wife taking a knife and circumcising the baby, um, which obviously is way beyond 8 days. You know, the baby was talked about in the first chapter, second chapter, and we're in chapter 5, almost 5, from chapter 4. And then she touched the foreskin on Moses' feet, which again tells me that he is lying and he's bedridden, and then Lord leaves him alone. I'm assuming that he gets up and he's good. Yeah, so a little harsh there. God is very harsh in the Old Testament. If you don't know that, by my recap on Genesis, Moses seems like a rebel. He's always questioning God. Like he's not very. He doesn't have a lot of faith in God. Faith in the fact that, you know, he listens to him. He has a huge relationship with him. Um, he does just about everything that God, but he questions him every single time. You sure? I can't do that, man. I gotta go and deliver these people. I gotta convince these people to come and follow me. There's over 500,000 people. And I think that was just men. I want to say it was just men. That was 600,000, without counting women and children. There's something about only counting men that I don't quite get yet. So you want me to go and I'm not even a good talker. I can't speak well. I can't do that, man. Like he's constantly in, you know, he's like, you know, take Aaron. Aaron could talk good. Your brother. Take him with you. You know, and here's another name just in case you're not confused enough. Now I'm Yahweh. Lord, Yahweh, God, El Shaddai, Adonai. I put a note here that Moses resembles Paul in many ways because he's questioning a lot of things, and he's an outsider to this. You know, kind of like Moses was a Roman, and I mean, Paul was a Roman, and trying to learn this tribe, and even though he's blood related to this, and one just heck with questioning. Moses is arguing with the Lord, you know, in chapter 6, verse 30, straight arguing with the Lord. Here's the first time that I see elders are, you know, warriors, like two brothers, two old warriors. They're both in their 80s, you know, Moses and Aaron going against Pharaoh and trying to get the people out of Egypt. Here's where it says Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers, you know, had their staffs turned into serpents too. And they turned water into blood, and the frog plagues. The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart again. Finally, Pharaoh gives up, but guess what? The Lord hardens his heart again, and hardens his heart again. That's 3 right there. After the locust, death of the Egyptians, firstborn. From now on, this month would be. So this is where Passover is explained, chapter 12. Here's another one of those sacrifices that I don't understand. You know, 1-year-old, a calf, goat, whatever, sheep. But it must have no defects. So a perfectly good animal. And if you're thinking, you know, we got 1 million people, even just 600,000 people, and every family has to do this through Passover. Each family, each household has 10 people. That's a lot of cows. Even if they had 20 people, that's a lot of death. It's mass murder by the whole community, slaughter at twilight. And then spread the blood on the door frames. So when I pass over, I can see that you're my people. You're good. I'm not going to take your firstborn and your animals. I don't get that. I picture it as Santa Claus going over the house, and you're God. You're omnipotent. You know, you could be everywhere anytime. You're not passing over. You're not in a journey, and you don't need a sign. You know where your people are. Like, it's a lot of questions. You know, and after all the sacrifice, just waste the leftovers. Burn the leftovers, literally burn the leftovers. And eat fast, for it's the day of the Passover. Eat the meal with urgency, for this is the Lord's Passover. I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. Okay, so the whole concept is that God is the only God. And yet he says, I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. God himself is saying there's gods of Egypt. There's other gods. He's going to execute judgment against them. Not he's going to prove they don't exist. Not just, that's a hard one there. Yeah. his death angel. That's a scary thing that God has a death angel. Israel stripping Egyptians from their wealth. Once all that happened, the Lord caused the Egyptians to look favorably on to the Israelites, and they gave the Israelites whatever they asked for, so they stripped the Egyptians off their wealth. So, and this is where it says, that night the people of Israel left the place and started for Sukkot, where there were about 600,000 men plus all the women and children. So you could imagine over 1 million people here. And yeah, it's a lot of people, a lot of sacrifice. You know, he allows them to strip the Egyptians off their wealth. Where later on he says, do not covet your neighbor. Do not treat foreigners with respect. Um, Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, bro. All this stuff is going on in the name of God, by God, a lot of the times. And on, each Passover lamb must be eaten in one house, carry over, and then from this is what you must do when the Lord fulfills the promise he swore to you and your ancestor. When he gives you the land where the Canaanites now live, you must present all firstborns, sons, and firstborn male animals to the Lord, for they belong to him. Present, as I see, is sacrifice. I could be wrong. It goes on to say, a firstborn donkey may be bought back from the Lord by presenting a lamb or a young goat in its place. So if it was presenting like at baptism, I present this to you, Lord, and then you go home and take them, then you wouldn't have to buy them back. But it gives you the option to buy them back. However, if you do not buy it back, you must break its neck. However, you must buy back every firstborn son. It doesn't say how much this costs. It doesn't say if it's monetary. It doesn't say. So that's, and that's how you get branded by the Lord. When they're going out of Egypt, it says, I'm going to send my angel ahead of you with a pillar of a cloud to provide light at night, and a pillar of fire. This allowed them to travel in the day and night. He guided them during the day with a pillar of a cloud, and then at night, pillar of fire. Pillars like a column. To me, that's the aliens. Once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart if he chases after you. Then the angel of God, who had been leading the people of Israel, moved to the rear of the camp. The pillar of the cloud also moved to the front and stood behind them. From the front and stood behind them. The cloud settled down on the Egyptians and the Israelite camp. As darkness fell, the cloud turned to fire. This is when the Egyptians were following, chasing after God hardened the Pharaoh's heart again after he had given up. And he's like, nah, let's get them. And chases them, and this is where the whole sea gets parted, and not a single one survive. To me, a bit of the harshness of that whole ordeal is that they sing over all this death. They sing on the triumph. Um, they sing about the 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 horses and the riders being hurled into the sea. Um, in the name of Yahweh, the chariots and the army being hurled in the sea and drowned, the Pharaoh's officers being drowned in the Red Sea, um, the Lord smashing the enemies, consume, blaze of fury like straw, um, just a little harsh. You know, I like Miriam, the prophet. She was female prophet. That's the first time that I've read that. By evening, you will realize it was the Lord who brought you to Egypt. Manna. So this is the first time I see about manna. So when the Egyptians are saying, we enjoyed being slaves in Egypt, man, to Moses. At least we have food. Like, you're starving us to death. Moses, like, God, Moses had a lot of relationship, great communication, talk to him, to God all the time, like a friend. He's the only one that I see so far that talks to him immensely. He's like, look at these people, man. They're blaming him. They starving. Like what? I'm gonna, in the mornings, I'm gonna give them bread, as much as they could eat, and at night, I'm gonna give them meat. So night comes and quail just fall off the sky, and in the morning, manna, whatever manna is, it's white like coriander seed and tastes like honey wafers, but but he says before that, I'm going to give them all the bread possible. So it's, to me, it's some sort of bread-like substance. By this time, Moses has two sons. Here, Jethro seems to be the advisor to Moses, because he sees Moses, all the way from morning to night, basically like sitting at a table playing judge and jury with these million people and trying to settle things. And Jethro is like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, you're going to be wore out. Like, you can't do this. You got to build a community, a system, a government, a religion, find, some trusted old men and be like, hey, you're in charge of these 1,000, you're in charge of these 1,000, let me empower you with some of these things. Throughout the Bible, not through a specific passage, I have these issues with free will. Not issues, but questions, thoughts, concerns. So it seems that free will is the gift from God to us. And we're free to choose whatever we choose. We're not free to escape cause and effect. I get that. But it seems throughout this, so far in Genesis and Exodus, God is like, either you do what I tell you to do, or I will kill you. I will kill your firstborn. I will kill the male animals. And not only that, but you will suffer. Your children will suffer. 4 generations on will suffer for the sins of the father. I will punish you. You gave us free will, but we're not free to do it. We will die. Punished. That's more than just cause and effect. Same thing with the sacrificing. You know, the sacrificing. You know, it's God's creation. It's your creation. We should adore it. We should revere it. We should be blessed by it, and we should be at awed by it. And if you need us to create a sacrifice, let me sacrifice my finger. Let me sacrifice my foot, my arm, my leg, my eye, my ear, my tongue. That's a sacrifice. No, let me go kill this poor lamb that's 8 days old or a year old, and not even have mercy on the sick ones. It better be a perfect one. And every household better do it. And so many times throughout the year. And so I don't, and here, God is about to deliver the commandments. He tells Moses, hey, put borders around Mount Sinai. I'm going to be up top, under this cloud. If anybody, crosses the boundary, stone them or shoot them with arrows to death. Put them to death. Anyone who touches the mountain will certainly be put to death. And then he gives the commandments. Here's where it says, if idol worshiping, I lay the sins of the parent upon the children, the entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations of those who reject me. Don't misuse the name of the Lord. And then here, I believe that the Sabbath, it's not Saturday, it's not Sunday. It just seems to be, you have 6 days of the week, your ordinary work, but the seventh, let it be of rest, dedicated to the Lord. So that, I'd always thought it was a specific day because that's what we're taught. Honor your father and mother, testify falsely against your neighbor. You must not testify, which to me shows me that gossip in several places shows me that gossip is definitely a sin. Your fear of him will keep you from sinning. The church to sacrifice, build an altar. It seems to be like the church, and burnt offerings and peace offerings, your sheep, your goats, your cattle, built an altar wherever I cause my name. So this place, you could build a church for the sacrifices, but for some reason you could only use uncut rock. It has to be just perfectly from nature. If you use a tool of some sort to shape it, then it's not right. And don't build steps to it because, someone might look under your clothing and see your nakedness. And then after that, we have the rules that God has instructed for slavery. I don't get it. As a man, if you have a slave if you buy a Hebrew slave, so now you're allowed to have slaves, much less your own people's. And you could have him work for you for 6 years. On the 7th year, you gotta let him loose. If he marries before, he could take his wife. But if he marries while he's a slave to you, that means that the master gave you a wife. And after 7 years, after 6 years, you could be free. Your wife and your children belong to your master, though. Oh, you wanna stay with them. Oh, okay. So now you serve me, the master, for life. And I get to pierce you and brand you as mine, because you belong to me. You can sell your daughter as a slave. You can marry a slave. A man must provide food, clothing, and sex to his slave woman, and if not, she's free to go. Um, Dishonor your father or mother, just put to death. Um, Lawsuits come into place here, compensate the victim, lost wages. Um, the punishment must match the injury. A life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise. It's pretty cut and dry. I was always taught that there was some other way of reading that. Mm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways of putting it. There's no other way of reading that one. This one I could read into a little bit more. The person who killed the thief is not guilty of murder. Thief caught breaking into a house, but if it happens in daylight, the one who killed the thief is guilty of murder. So I could read that into it. You come in, you sneak in my house in the middle of the night, and I kill you. I'm good. But if I see you come in, I could arrest you. I could do other ways. I could injure you. Then I shouldn't just kill you just out of retaliation. So I could read into that one a little bit. I think I'll be nice to immigrants. I can see some politicians being in trouble with this one. You must not mistreat or oppress foreigners in any way. Widows and orphans, better be good to them. My anger will blaze against you, and I will kill you by the sword. Be do anything with them. But you must give me your firstborn of your cattle, sheep, and goat on the 8th day. Don't even let them get too old to enjoy life at all. You must not pass along false rumors, gossip. You must not oppress foreigners. There it is again. I'm sending an angel before you to protect you along the pay close attention to him, obey his instruction. Here he talks about an angel, but I wonder if that's Moses, because that's who is giving the instruction. That's his representative. Says, do not rebel against him. He is my representative, and he will not forgive your rebellion. But he speaks about an angel. I don't know if he's speaking about Moses specifically or a particular angel. Over here says, I will send my terror ahead of you and create panic among all the people whose land you invade. So I'm saying I'm God, and I'm gonna let you take over people's houses. But God didn't allow that from the Egyptians, as far as, if he could control inside of people, why didn't he just chill Pharaoh instead of making him do everything that he made him do, harden his heart? Moses carefully wrote down all the Lord's instruction. There's something about blue, where they saw God of Israel, and under his feet it was this lapis blue, brilliant blue, like the sky itself. And many places people see God, including here, and in Genesis, people saw him, didn't even recognize him, and yet there are some places around here that says you can't even see me, you would die. God inscribed the 10 Commandments himself. Moses went up to the mountain, spent 40 days, 40 nights up there. The tabernacle, the building of the tabernacle, the clothing of the priest, light. It was very specific. Lots of blue again, the anointing of the head with the oils. again, sacrifices Aaron. Next, Aaron and his sons must lay their hand on the head of one of the rams, then slaughter the ram, splatter its blood against all sides of the altar. Burnt offering is pleasing, has a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Blood to the right earlobes, to the toe. Just wow. You must pay a ransom to the Lord so he doesn't strike with a plague after you're 20 years old. It's like taxes for the Lord's house. Instructions for the Sabbath. The covenant was written by the finger of God himself. Look at some gods that, so Aaron melts gold from earrings and whatnot from the Israelites, molds it into a calf. They start adoring it. Moses negotiates with God. Here, this one was a little weird for me too. God is God, but it shows here on 32 that Moses was able to negotiate with God. It's like, hey man, yo, chill. Take your anger down, bring it down. You're not gonna kill the people, what happened to the covenant between Abraham and you, that his descendants were gonna, and you're over here about to kill him. Calm down. I'll take care of this. You just chill. All right. And it says, and the Lord changed his mind about the terrible disaster he had threatened to bring on his people. But then Moses comes down the mountain, sees the whole thing with the calf and everything, and really, what are you guys doing? So he melts the cow, which was made of gold. He grinds it into powder. He puts it in water, makes them drink it. There's probably some philosophical meaning to that. And then he tells them, all of you who are on the Lord's side, step over here. Come on. All right. Now, I want you to go back and forth and kill your sons, brothers, neighbors. And 3,000 people get killed. Their own people. And then there's this place, the tent of meeting. I like that. It's kind of like a meditation place. And there's a cloud that hovers around it. Just like in Mount Sinai, when Moses talks to God, he comes down, doesn't realize his face is radiant, it's glowing. So he puts a veil on it. So here he does the same thing. Every time he talks to God, he puts a veil on to talk to the people, and then he takes it off when he talks to God again. And people just look at the cloud above the tent, which is really cool, really different. And then here Moses tells God, show me your glorious presence. So it seems like he's been seeing him this whole time. He has this great communication with him, except for in the mountain where he was afraid to look at him because of the fire, it seemed. But here he said, the Lord says, for no one may see me and live. And then he's like, but you know what? I'm going to let you see me from behind, but my face will not be seen. Reiterates the instruction, the commandment. And here, I think this is where the Judaism say that you can't mix milk and meat, but I may read more specifics elsewhere, but it says you must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. So to me, that's very specific. You want a cheeseburger? Just make sure that the burger is not the calf of the produce that cheese. So you could go have a cheeseburger. You just not that specific one. He wasn't aware of the face glowing tabernacle again. It went through again, and I think that was it. That's Exodus. So the story of Moses bringing his people, from being born, how he came up. There wasn't anything about his youth except for how he was saved, and how he saved the people from Egypt. But that was my recap on Exodus. Hope you enjoyed it.